Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Book Club podcast with your hosts Sydney Timmins and Becky Lawrence. We would like to take this opportunity to let you know that we will be covering a diverse range of mental health topics that may be distressing to some listeners. You can find a full list of the topics being covered in each episode in the show notes. Please check the show notes before listening to any of our episodes. Welcome to the Mental Health Book Club podcast with your hosts Sydney Timmins and
Becky Lawrence.
And today we're going to be discussing the book called Dandelion Angel by C.B. Calico. So on Goodreads the rating has been given as 4.5 stars and Amazon rating is 4 stars. So for our ratings I gave it 5 stars and Becky you gave it
4 stars.
So let's start by going through the book description like we do. So this particular book has won the silver medal at the 2016 Elite Awards with top honours on the women's issues categories. So the description goes like this. What do women learn from their mothers? Everything they want to be and everything they don't. After all, not all mothers are created equal. In C.B. Calico's stunning new contemporary fiction novel, Dandelion Angel, we meet 4 German women brought together by the pain of their mothers. Each matriarch suffers from borderline personality disorder, a condition their daughters never knew had a name when they were growing up. They wished they had. They wished someone had told them this was treatable or that other girls were being raised like they were, isolated, confused, and completely unsure of their worth. Karen has known all her life that her mother Ute cannot be pleased, yet she tries even in her 30s. She will do anything to gain her approval. She'll even risk her marriage. But Ute's own wounds, buried in layers of history and tragedy, go too deep. To the outside world, Iria's childhood looked like a dream. A famous actress for a mother, trips to Disneyland, she had it all. They didn't see her mother's rages, her tantrums and insults. Iria suffered it all quietly until her mother's cruelty threatened Iria's own son, and so with the instincts of a lioness she finally breaks free. Jo gave up everything, including her spare time and small joys, to look after her needy, dependent mother. Only after her mother's eventual death does she gain some solace. Mandy calls herself Angel. Unimaginably wounded by the scars her mother carried from her East German upbringing, Mandy ran away from home young. Mute, stunted by a heart-breaking stutter, she squats in Berlin. At a crossroads, she meets the right cop at the right time and finally begins to heal. Angel emerges from the desperation of her life, just as the stubborn dandelion on her balcony breaks through a tiny crack in the concrete. With a sensitive hand, Calico reveals the entwined lives of these 4 remarkable women. A touching and fascinating work of commercial fiction, Dandelion Angel is a revelation of the tenacity of the human spirit, as it focuses on the recovery of the daughters, rather than the abuse by their mothers. So this is kind of one that's close to my heart. So I am a sufferer of borderline personality disorder, and I understand where this book is coming from and I found it very interesting. However, I did have some issues with the fact that these women can't necessarily change their behaviour because they have no idea what's wrong with them.
Yeah, that's true. And it is hard, but then the book focuses more on the women coming to terms with what their mothers did. And that is quite close to my heart because I have had a lot of issues with my mum growing up. That's where my own personal abuse came from in my childhood. And as an adult, I've had to learn how to deal with that, even though she might not change or get help because she doesn't realise what she has done.
Exactly, but I guess back then they wouldn't have necessarily known what borderline personality disorder was or is,
no.
So they wouldn't have necessarily been able to get the help that they would need. I'm guessing they would have assumed that it was normal. I mean, I didn't notice or I didn't think there was anything wrong.
When was it first classified?
It was first classified back in the 60s, so they wouldn't necessarily have been growing up in the time when this would have been classified.
Yeah, and also, as you said in an earlier podcast, it is really hard to diagnose it, and you found it hard to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why I find it hard to get the diagnosis.
Why is it hard to diagnose?
Probably because people aren't necessarily aware of it as a condition.
The
doctors, I mean, I was told I was weird when I told my doctor that I had this diagnosis. Also the fact that there is a possible 9 diagnostic criteria and you only have to meet 5, so the combinations of different things that people could suffer from will vary greatly between people. So this is such an individualized illness that people find it difficult to identify the categories, whether they fit it or not.
So is it something you, although it's got different categories, is it something you have or don't have, or is it something that's like a spectrum?
No, I think everybody has borderline traits, definitely. I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't necessarily have borderline traits. It's just that the borderline person will find that the things that impact them are so severe that it will alter the way they behave and how they interact with just general life.
Right.
As a result of my borderline, I became extremely depressed.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, so they would have seen the depression, but they wouldn't necessarily have seen what was causing that depression.
Right. Whereas most people would maybe have a reaction to something and then carry on. The person with borderline personality can't get over that point. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. So I would have a complete meltdown.
Yeah, rather than just maybe a bad day because someone's upset you.
Exactly. And then I would take it and then I would lash out at the people closest to me.
Yeah, okay. I think that helps to kind of understand a bit better, because I think the one thing I really enjoyed with this book was that it did focus on the children, but at the same time, we are all a product of our upbringing.
Oh, definitely.
And it is interesting to see how they sort of were able to justify what the women were like, and it's probably traits people don't even realise how they are affected by their parents, and we all are, even if your parent doesn't have borderline personality.
I mean, I did like the fact that it was coming from the daughter's perspective rather than the mother's, and you could see clearly the different traits for each of the mothers. So this particular book, C.B. Calico has based her writings on a book by Christine Ann Lawson, which is called Understanding the Borderline Mother, Helping Her Children Transcend the Intense, Unpredictable and Volatile Relationship. So really, I guess with this particular book, it classifies the mothers classifies 4 different personality types based on borderline.
Okay.
So there is the hermit, the witch, the queen, and the waif, which you can see in each of the 4 mothers. So they're classified into those different things. I think one of the take-home messages that I'd like to get out there is that it's difficult to categorise these people into the 4 nice slots. For me, I would find that I had all of the behaviours that they would have described before I got treatment. So I think maybe it would be good to jump into going through the stories given by the daughters.
Yeah, so in this book we're going to break this down rather than going where we usually do chronologically through a book. What we are going to do is break this down into the different mother-daughter relationships and deal with each of those separately rather than jump back and forth, which would be even more confusing. Although I like that in the book, the way that it's structured.
Yep, so in the book you have a section or a chapter that is from one of the daughter's perspectives. Then you jump to the next daughter and so on. So you've got 4 chapters that are introducing each of the daughters and their stories. You then have this middle section, which is again split up for each daughter, that tells you or gives you information about what has happened since the last time we saw them in the book. And then the last chapters are purely about the upbringing or of the mothers, so you get to see where the behaviours may have originated from.
Yeah, because it starts off, you start feeling, you just hear all the bad stuff kind of thing, and then you can see that justification later on as to why these girls were treated the way they were.
And I'm not saying that they should be allowed to get away with the way that they treat their daughters.
No.
It's just giving you a better understanding of what has impacted their own development in life.
And often we everyone's in this cycle of their parents teach them how to be parents, you then become parents, and if you don't break that cycle and realise what's going on and justify it, change it as you need to, then it's going to carry on the way that it is. So I see a counsellor to try and help to not be my mother and that, but my mother is similar to her mother in ways.
And that is totally inevitable, isn't it, really? You always are going to pick up stuff from your parents and act the way that they do. I mean, there's times when I'm like, oh my goodness, that is so me channeling my mother.
And some of it's good. Some of it is take the good things that you can from your parents, and you still learn from them and from the things they do. And hopefully you become a better parent for that. But at the same time, you will do things subconsciously because your parents have taught you a certain way.
Yeah. So, as I said, we're going to break up, or really, as Becky said, we're going to break it up into each of the daughters and their stories with their mothers. So the first daughter that we see is Karen and her mother Ute. So with Karen, she's desperate to achieve her mother Ute's approval, and we follow her story over a Christmas period where she's gone to an extreme level to ensure that the gift that she has chosen for her mother is the best ever. However, the Louis Vuitton luggage and trip to Andalusia does not seem to hit the mark. Ute turns out to be nagging and controlling and doing nothing but complaining over Karen's choices. And further on in the book, we find out that Ute's family had to flee Dresden during the Second World War, so there's quite a lot going on in Ute's backstory. However, just thinking about poor Karen, who is desperate to get her mum's approval, and I mean, she buys her a 7-piece Louis Vuitton luggage set, and I decided, because I'm not very fashion conscious, to go and have a look and see how much Louis Vuitton luggage costs.
That must be thousands when you pick it was the 7 pieces together.
Yeah, so the cheapest thing you can get is for £120, so this is obviously UK, is a garment cover or a shoe pouch for £120.
A shoe pouch?
Yeah, so you just like put
my shoes
in a bag
okay.
that is branded with Louis Vuitton in it.
Okay.
You can also get a jewellery case. How much would you pay for a jewellery case to go on holiday with? I
don't take that much jewellery away, but then we're not the fashion conscious type. I bet if that, so it was
£120 just for a garment cover.
Oh my god, so the jewellery thing must be £900?
£6,450 for a jewellery case. If you wanted a trunk to take away on holiday with you, it would be £18,300. If you wanted just a holdall, it started at £940 going up to £1,170. And if you wanted a carry-on, roller luggage that you would take onto a plane, it started from £1,680 up to £3,750.
Wow.
So you can imagine...
I think that luggage is more expensive than my car.
Probably more expensive than my house at this rate. I mean, blimey.
Yeah, that is a lot. But and the thing is she, if this lady fled Dresden...
Yes.
She probably doesn't have the same... Well, I don't know. Would that make you want your possessions become more important or less important to you?
I would have thought it would make them more important. But then, to be honest, if you're a borderline, anything that someone else does, there's going to be something wrong. Yeah, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Well, for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, she is very
generalise.
critical, isn't she? But I think she doesn't want her daughter spending that much money on her as well. That's one of the things she comments, isn't it? That this is too expensive. This is too expensive for me. And even though she's trying to show her that money's no object, I want to spend this money on you, and she is doing that as a show of love.
Yes.
Her mother's not appreciating that money equals love.
No. And Karen's mother is characterised as being the hermit, and so the darkness within the borderline hermit is fear, and we'll discuss a bit more about this later, but it's this fact that she is so critical of her daughter that it's almost unbearable to read at times. Just the feelings that I got as a result of reading it, I just felt so sorry for Karen, who is just desperate to get her mum just to go, you know what, darling, I love you.
Yeah. No,
that's all she wants.
Yeah.
So she spends all this money on the 7-piece luggage set. She also goes to the hair salon for hours and hours to get hair extensions, which her hairdresser has recommended that she doesn't do it because of her hair being so thin and the weight of the hair that's going to be added into what she already has. But she does this because her mum often tells her that her hair is thin and wispy and it would look better long.
Yeah.
So she spends hours and hours.
And it's painful. That's the bit that got me, actually. I spend hours on my hair. I love my hair, having my hair done, and it's a really important part of being me. But it's not painful. I don't think I could go through that much pain, and she continues to have that pain afterwards because it is so tightly wound to her scalp after the effect. And I think, she is going through, it is that walking over coals for somebody.
Yeah, it's going all out for getting a mother's approval, isn't it? It's like proper putting yourself in agony just to get some love from her.
Yeah, it's that, see me, love me, I will do anything for this. But I don't think she always communicates to her mum enough to that her mum knows that's why she's doing this. Like, she wouldn't, I don't know if her mum would ever have connected the fact that she had done that to her hair with her wanting love.
Probably not. I think that it would be something that would be missed.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have noticed, but again, I can't generalise.
No, but I suppose she just wants a general comment about how nice her hair is. It's so much beautiful. But like you said, she can't do anything right for her mother. She's never going to get that approval she wants because of her mother's, not dining. Yeah, her borderline.
Yeah. But whilst at the hair salon, Karen views her mother and her daughter together. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
And she looks at the relationship, and it is completely different from what she has known from her own childhood. And she becomes angry and resentful of these people, which is kind of fair enough, because this young girl is at a proper hair salon getting highlights in her hair in comparison to what Karen's mother put her through, where she took her to the barber's and gave the barber specific instructions to give her something that made her look like a boy in comparison to this girl that's got this lovely flowing hair and highlights. And it was apparent from the description at this point in the book that Ute was relishing in the experience of trying to remove all of Karen's femininity, that's an interesting word to say, by smiling and whispering to the barber about, and lying to Karen in the first place about where she was going.
Yeah. I wonder why. I wonder what could we ever find out from her mother's history, why she's so focused on her being like a boy?
I don't think it's necessarily her being like a boy. It's more likely about the competition between the two.
Yeah.
That if she starts to change and become more of a girl, or viewed as more of a girl, she's going to get more attention than her mum, maybe.
Yeah. No, that's true.
I don't know. As we go through, we get to get a little bit more of an insight into what Ute is thinking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she gets extremely angry, and at this point we start to see Karen's own reaction to herself, like her inner thoughts about how she feels about her own self, and it's very negative. So she describes herself as being clumsy, disgusting and jealous, because she starts to tell herself off for being jealous.
If you've always had a critical parent, you're going to believe that you are not good enough, and you are going to criticise yourself more and more.
Completely.
You're going to take that on board. I mean, I know that from personal experience. When you are criticised so much, you
take it on board. You can't get away from it, really.
Yeah. And I know I'm very critical of myself because of that.
Yeah, me too. She also seems to have a very strained relationship with her husband, because her husband doesn't actually understand why she wants her mother's approval so much, and he doesn't quite see the dynamic between the two.
Well, I think it's very hard if you've never experienced that kind of family before. It is going to be hard to actually understand why she is craving this approval. And it is like a real craving. It is, everything else is put aside. Her love for her husband, that relationship, nurturing their relationship, is all put on hold and on side so that she can actually get her mother's approval.
Yeah. It's very apparent that Karen needs to feel, or has this overwhelming need to feel, that she is being perfect, but probably because of the criticism her mother gave her, as a way to compensate for not being criticised. Is that if she is completely perfect all the time,
perfect wasn't even good enough for her. Nothing short of perfect is going to be worse.
Exactly. We also learn from the flashbacks that Karen's brother Sebastian took his own life when Karen was 12. So that gets developed in the next chapters, but it also has a little bit about Ute's backstory, and that she was sad when she had to leave Moravia as the approaching Red Army was getting closer. So this is when they fled to Dresden during the Second World War. And so in terms of the suicide, from what I would assume, being the person here with borderline, is that she would probably have thought, so this is Ute's mother, that she was being abandoned by him.
Yeah.
Even though he was taking an extreme step and ending his own life, it would feel like someone was abandoning her and just leaving her.
Yeah. Would she have felt that was her fault as well?
Potentially, but I think it would be more about the fact that someone who has borderline has this extreme fear of abandonment and holds on to anyone and everyone, even if that relationship is strained. And by taking his own life, it was the ultimate abandonment for her, is that he is absolutely gone. There's no going back. Like, this would be hurting her core values and her core beliefs, so much so that it would cause her to have additional issues. The issue of abandonment, I will go into much more detail in the podcast episode specifically about borderline personality disorder. Within the information that we see, we also get some more information about Ute, particularly when the children came along. So it was made clear that Ute had given up her own career to look after her children. So there would have been this issue of a lack of self-identity, because she would have had to come from being a career woman to a stay-at-home mum, which could also cause a little bit of resentment towards her children. She becomes the primary caregiver and in some ways has had to give up everything that she knew before.
And it might not have even been her choice, because socially, especially if you go back through the decades, women were expected to do that. It's not as if her husband could have maybe given up his career to do it. So it's often forced upon. If you're going to have children, the women are the ones that have to give up their jobs and look after them.
But it seems that she didn't necessarily commit to it in what you would expect a true mother to do. So there wasn't much home cooking or anything. She would still go and buy stuff from the store. And
kind of a protest against the role.
In the book, Ute is described as being self-centred, critical and a hypochondriac. And that's by Karen's husband, Tom. And you can see that there is a huge change in her personality. So in terms of Karen's personality, from when she is at home with Tom to when she is with her mother. So I don't know if you noticed that shift in the way she was reacting to things. So when she is with her mother, she is happy and she's constantly praising her mum. She's trying to make her feel important and loved. But Ute continues to really do everything in her power to belittle Karen. I don't know if you recognise that.
Yeah, no, definitely. She does. You're right. She belittles her. And her reaction is different. I think she is trying to pretend it's that put on a role as if perfection is there. She's happy. Everything is perfect. She wants to please everybody, and it's that separation from actually what she's really feeling, which is actually a lot of anxiety. I felt quite anxious for her when she was around her mum.
Completely. And that stress, I don't know about you, but I got that kind of body sensation of anxiety. With the pressure on your chest of, I must try and be perfect and please this woman, but I can't ever do it properly. Whatever I do is never gonna please her.
And I think from my own past, it made me think of my relationship with my mum and how I used to feel much more anxious going to see her because of what she might say, of what she might do, what she might not approve of something I was going to tell her. And I can relate to that anxious feeling that you just seem to feel when you're reading the book. And I felt, you're not quite sure how the reader did it, but it really made me, the writer, do it. But it really made me feel as the reader that I could feel that anxiety, even though she doesn't say it. It's just the way it's written.
Yep, so she's definitely showing you and not telling you how you should be feeling.
Oh, definitely.
What did you think about all of the criticism that he gives to Karen? So I've got one example is, darling, these, what are they called, extensions? Well, they look great. They give you nice volume, but don't you find the hair a bit too long for a woman your age?
Ooh.
That's a bit of a blow, isn't it? So she's gone to all this
there's so many
effort.
Criticisms within that one
sentence.
Yeah, its age has been criticised, the length of her hair has been criticised, the fact that it's almost like the fact that she's got these fake extensions is a step above where she's spending money on something she shouldn't be. So there's almost like 3 criticisms within that one quote.
Yeah, it gets better.
Or worse.
So, or worse. Also seems to be constantly displeased and nags poor Karen. And also she seems to delight in the ability to humiliate her daughter. So at one point she says, "You were my fat little cherub," because that's going to make anyone feel very special. She also has this fantastic quote where she turns around and goes, "That one ain't no Einstein," when they're talking about
she's
Karen's
fat,
failings.
She's stupid. She has, her hair's too long, her appearance isn't right. I mean, there is nothing this girl can do to please her.
Exactly. And it's the fact that she also then brings up some of her past that may not show Karen in the most favourable light, but she was doing it because she desperately didn't want the fallout from her mother's rage. So there's a point where they're discussing around the dinner table, so this kind of links into the Einstein comment, that because Karen had failed Latin and maths, she decided that she was going to pretend that she was sick so that her mother wouldn't go to the parent-teacher night where she would find out what she had done. So this trying not to tell her that she had failed these 2 things because she was terrified. But yet she uses that as a way to embarrass her even more.
Yeah.
And I did feel extremely sorry for her, because I mean, as
She's
an
trying
adult,
to justify her criticisms,
exactly.
isn't she?
And as an adult, I've had these things where things from my past have been brought up to, I don't know, make me feel humiliated about certain things that I, as a child, wouldn't have been able to necessarily understand why it was wrong.
And to her husband.
Well, it's in front of him.
Yeah, you would think that they would be on their best behaviour of trying to bring out the nicest of things to say, not the most humiliating.
Exactly. And even though Karen tries to defend herself from her mother then discredits everything that she says. So it's just, I don't know, I felt so sorry for Karen.
Yeah. Do you think so? Her mother, is she trying to pretend she's perfect as well?
Yeah. She's given that outward appearance that there's absolutely nothing wrong with their relationship, everything is fine. But yet it's the snide comments that are made that indicate that there's something else that's going on. And also the fact that her behaviour,
anyone, are they?
And it's the behaviour of Ute when she's just so dismissive of everything.
Yeah.
As a result of this, Tom and Karen argue and he leaves because he doesn't understand the impact that Ute has on Corinne. And Corinne then returns home and she's angry about the situation. So whilst away at the Christmas get-together, her mother has given her some hideous present that is this very nasty sounding vase. And at the very end, because all of this has just become too much for Karen, she's all of a sudden, she's just like, you know what, this isn't what should be happening. So she ends up smashing the vase and then she literally cuts off all of her hair. I don't know, it's a bit reminiscent of perhaps Britney Spears when she did her hair cutting off, because she's got to a point where it's all just too much.
Yeah, I mean, you can't carry on like that. There's got to be a point where she does accept that she's never going to get the approval of her mother, so she might as well do what she wants.
Exactly, and as hard as it sounds, ignore her mother.
Yeah.
And just go, you know what, it's not your life, this is my life, and if you don't like something, tough, I'm an adult now, you can't rule everything that I do.
Yeah, if you like your hair a certain way, have it a certain way. If you like your personality, your job, how much you spend on presents and stuff, then as long as you're happy with that, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if her mother approves or not.
Exactly, and I think definitely it's difficult for the partner to understand. So poor Tom is like, your mother is so horrible and dismissive and humiliating, and she does all of this stuff and she seems to enjoy it. He doesn't understand the dynamic between them.
No.
Then he's like, well, why are you still trying to make this woman love you when it's obvious she doesn't?
And this is the thing, I think most people, if that was your friend, and they were always like that with you, you would probably cut that friend out of your life, because they would have such a negative impact on you. You wouldn't have that tie, because it's a mother.
It's different. And
mothers are meant to love you. Mothers are meant to do anything for you. And so because of that, sort of what they're meant to be like, you would then, as a daughter, if you're not living up to that, then you automatically think it's your fault, especially when they're critical, rather than their fault. And she needs to realise that actually her mum is the one that should be changing.
Yeah, her mum's got the problem, not her.
Yeah. And that is very hard to accept, though, that actually you automatically think it's you. And if you this woman is now in her 20s, 30s, so she's had 30 years of being told you are the one that is wrong, and trying to figure that out. For myself, I felt so worthless after the relationship I had with my mum, and it took me a long time to realise that actually I was worth something, which sounds, you should be able to know that, but it's very hard if you've been told for 30 years that you're not, through all the criticism, through all the problems.
Exactly, it's just not easy. But we return in the next chapter to Karen, and we see that Karen and Tom have decided to go to couples therapy, which does not make Karen happy, which is fair enough, because she's not necessarily seeing the relationship as it truly is between her mother and herself, and between her and Tom.
She also, I don't think, doesn't want to accept that is the relationship she has with her mum.
Also means she's admitting failure, which she has been basically emotionally abused about for 30 years, to say that this is not an option. You cannot be a failure. You have to be perfect. And this is just something that isn't working in the way she would want.
So, of course, she can't put that perfect front up if that's going on.
Exactly. And she also feels that she is the one that's being judged. She feels like the therapist and her husband are the ones ganging up on her and are trying to make her feel even worse about the situation than perhaps it is.
Yeah.
And again, I can understand where she's coming from with that, because if you've been you've been told your whole entire life that you're not good enough, then you do become defensive when other people say it. You, in some ways, you accept your own mother doing it, but you find it hard when other people say that to you.
Probably because you've had enough of it from your mum, so why should you have to accept it from anyone else?
Yeah, that is true. But during this time when they are both in couples therapy, Karen is reported as being moody and depressed, withdrawn, childishly dependent on her parents, according to Tom. So Tom really doesn't understand why certain things are happening.
Yeah.
She also feels that Mrs. Schiffer is putting Tom on a pedestal, where Tom is the angel, the sweetheart who could do nothing wrong, which may be something to do with the way that her relationship is with when her brother died.
Yeah.
So he was the golden boy, however she was the one to blame. So I think we get to see that a bit later, that Ute is blaming Karen for his death and not herself.
Yeah, that's hard. And she will have no idea she's doing that.
No, she wouldn't at all, because she doesn't recognise that this would be a big issue, is the fact that he is going to be the golden one, but she is going to be the one that takes all of the rubbish from her mother.
Yeah.
So she feels like it's that kind of situation. It's them versus her, which, as you say, is tough.
Yeah.
But Karen is defensive over her behaviour, and she, as I say, she feels attacked and ganged up on. But we also find out more about her brother Sebastian, who is the boy who committed suicide when Karen was 12. The therapist feels that this is an important thing to explore and for Karen to discuss, but she feels like she's being criticised because they are making her feel like she's being obstinate about not wanting to talk about how she's feeling and how she feels suspicious of others, also her fears, and that she has this thing where she doesn't trust people. I mean, if you have a mother that is so hurtful, why on earth would you be trusting others?
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard because, as well, like, her mother's basically telling her she's not good enough to receive her mother's love, so you wouldn't be good enough to receive anybody's love. So that, it just adds to that ability to not trust when someone's being nice to you because you don't believe it's true.
No, exactly. And so we find out that Karen blames herself for Sebastian's death, so kind of what we were talking about earlier. The reason why she blames herself for his death is because of what Ute has said to her and how she has discussed the situation with her daughter. So it turns out that Karen was at home alone because Ute was in hospital because she had some stomach pain. Ute, being the hypochondriac that she is, has felt that she probably has cancer, so she has demanded to go into the hospital. We also find out that Karen's dad was at work at the time, so not at hospital with his wife, but working, which kind of also shows the fact that he is absent from Karen's life, so he wasn't necessarily a support to her while she was growing up with her mother.
Yeah.
So he could have been at home with the kids, or he could have been at the hospital. Either way, it would have been better than him being at work. Also, we find out that he liked to drink, and that was his way of dealing with Ute and the way she would treat him. And that he didn't necessarily interact with his children like other parents do. So there's a big bit about her describing how her dad was absent during her upbringing and how she looked at other dads and was like, my dad doesn't do that kind of thing, which I thought was very sad.
It's almost like because he was criticised so much, he kind of checks out.
Yeah.
Rather than, whereas her response to being criticised is to try and do more, his response seems to be, well, if I can't do anything right, I might as well do nothing at all.
Yeah. And to be honest, I can understand why you would want to be channeling out of there by using alcohol.
Yeah.
But it turns out that Ute doesn't have cancer, but this is a typical pattern of behaviour for her, which meant that as a result of Ute constantly feeling that there was something wrong with her, it caused Karen to worry, which is kind of understandable.
Well, you would. If your mum is always sick, you would constantly worry about her.
And so she was always worried about whether her mum was well, whether her mother was going to die on her, because she could have a serious illness. However, it turns out that each time that you decided that she had something wrong with her, the doctors couldn't find anything wrong, and she would seek second and third and fourth opinions because she was convinced there was something wrong.
Yeah.
You also criticised and judged Sebastian's girlfriend because he was a bit older. He had a girlfriend, and she uses manipulation to get them to do what she wants. So she calls his girlfriend a screw up and a bad influence on Sebastian. So it's not like she's holding back about her opinions about his girlfriend. And because Karen has been so worried about you, because once again she's in the hospital, she feels like she needs to protect her mother and also protect Sebastian from his screw up and bad influential girlfriend.
Well, as the younger sibling, you would take what the mother has said as truth. So you wouldn't necessarily get to know or want to get to know the girlfriend to then form their own opinion.
Yeah. So on the morning of the day that her brother commits suicide, Karen stops Sebastian's girlfriend from talking to him on the phone because she decides that she's going to hold her mother's corner. She's going to fight for what she thinks is right because her mother tells her that is not good for him, but she doesn't tell you that this is what has happened on that morning. And her mum jumps to the wrong conclusion in accusing Karen and her brother of fighting. And because she has accused her of that, Ute then tells Karen that she was jealous of her brother and that she made his life miserable, which is why he then went and committed suicide.
And this is awful. I can't imagine how heartless you have to be to blame a sibling for another sibling's suicide.
There's much more going on in this situation, isn't there? And it's not poor Karen that is to blame. There's all of these additional factors that are being put in.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to blame herself, I suppose. So her mother is projecting her own worries that she's to blame onto somebody else, because it's so much easier to blame someone else than to look at yourself.
Oh, definitely. So
I just think it was really hard for me to read that part of the book because I felt so sorry for Karen, because I just thought, how could somebody who's meant to love you beyond anything else
tell you that
you're the one to blame for your brother's suicide, because that is going to make you feel obviously absolutely awful.
Yeah, and it's great because Karen at this point starts to think about what has happened in the past and starts to realise that perhaps there are things that have been unsaid and some unfinished business and unresolved issues in her family that need to be sorted out. So she decides that she wants to meet with her brother's girlfriend. So this is the girlfriend she has refused to let speak to Sebastian on the day of his suicide.
And this is years later, isn't it?
This is 25 years later. She goes, you know what, I need to find out why she was calling. So she tries to talk to her mum about this before she does anything, which I don't know. At this point, you think about Ute's behaviour and you go, why did you even bother? If you want to speak to her, it's your decision. Why do you need to speak to your mum about it?
Because she needs her mum's approval again. She needs her mum to say, yes, you're doing the right thing. You're trying to get to the bottom of all this.
And funnily enough, Ute gets extremely angry with Corinne and puts the phone down on her.
Of course, she doesn't understand why. She probably doesn't want to bring up the issue all over again, because it actually would bring up her own failings.
Yeah, exactly. So Corinne is brave enough to meet with Sebastian's girlfriend, and they discuss what was going on at the time that he committed suicide, and it turns out that they had planned to run away to France together, and that was why she was ringing on the day he committed suicide, which again makes my heart break, because there was a way out other than suicide.
Yeah, but he didn't take that.
No, he decided to opt for suicide instead of getting away from his mother.
Which must have haunted the girlfriend as to why he didn't choose that option when she knew that was another option.
Yeah.
Which isn't explored in the book. No,
it's not explored in the book.
But yeah, it would be interesting to know.
So the book then goes through the other girls, and we come back to Ute and Corinne again, but this time we start to learn a bit more about Ute and what has happened during her past to have led to the way she behaves and acts as an adult. So when we return to Corinne, it's about her trying to find the best present for her mother. So she decides that she is going to contact her mother's family, or the ones that she can find, to see if they have any pictures of Ute when she was a child. So she manages to get hold of one of her family members, and she then starts to learn a bit more about what happened for Ute during the years that she was going through all the upheaval that would have shaped her emotional well-being.
When she was fleeing to Dresden.
So when she's fleeing, it turns out that she was caught up in a large bombing in Dresden, and that at the time her parents were really desperately trying to survive at this point. So at this time, Ute is only 8 years old, and they don't necessarily have the ability to offer the emotional support that Ute would have needed at 8 years old, seeing the death and destruction. It also turns out that during the time that they were fleeing to Dresden, one of her family members has a baby. They had to wait, which is why they ended up in Dresden at the time that they did. But the baby was so sickly that unfortunately it died shortly after birth. Very traumatic for someone that is
8.
Yeah.
8 years old. And it's such a, it's an age where
you're developing, you're learning.
And these children really start to come into their own at this point. They start developing their character and what they have more aspirations, and their intellect grows. And it's not just about learning how to walk and talk and do the basics. They're actually starting to, they're learning to read, they're learning to explore, they're learning, the outside world more than just learning about themselves and their family.
Exactly.
So it's a really key time for children. And so to go through something so traumatic at that age is going to have a lasting effect. Do you think that's the root of her borderline personality disorder?
I think it is, because she wouldn't necessarily have got the emotional, as I said, the emotional support that she would have needed. And one of the things they think that can lead to borderline personality is trauma, and this would have been that trauma that could have started to cause the immense fear and that abandonment.
And I suppose alongside that trauma, she's got the lack of emotional support. So that combined effect of traumatic experiences at a young age alongside a family or a parent system that isn't actually supporting you emotionally or showing you the love that you need emotionally, then maybe that combination is what makes her feel the way she's doing, and therefore she doesn't know how to show love to Karen.
No, exactly. And also, so I did a little bit of looking up of what the Dr. Lawson says about the hermit mother. So in this situation, Ute has been classified as the borderline hermit, and the borderline hermit seeks solitude but paradoxically longs to belong. So even though she's pushing people away, she desperately wants you to love her as well, and I think that's probably where most of her issues are coming from. So she is going to find sleeping difficult. She will be ruminating about the safety of her children and her husband and her job and her health, which we see a lot when we have the discussion about her being a hypochondriac and being concerned about whether she has got cancer or not.
And the fact that her son committed suicide as well is going to play into that, the Definitely. Fear of their safety, that when she wasn't around because she was ill, and in her mind, even if it came back, the doctor said there was nothing, in her mind she was ill, she was in hospital, she was where she needed to be, and yet this still happened.
Exactly. And she is extraordinarily sensitive. She looks for hidden meanings in everything. So she looks for hidden meanings in the gifts that she's given, in the invitations that people give her, and even in innocent comments that people make. So there might be hidden meaning.
So actually, in buying her something expensive, she
might
would
think
see that actually you're thinking I don't have enough money, or you think I'm not stylish enough, or whatever it is, the message she's getting. Actually, she's not seeing the gratitude that you've got me an expensive gift because you love me. Instead, she's seeing you've got me an expensive gift because you're criticizing part of me.
Exactly. And so with the hermit, the main emotion is fear. So they have been hurt so much by loved ones, even including Sebastian, who would have committed suicide.
Yeah.
She's been hurt so much by loved ones that you decide to never be hurt again. And so she builds a wall around herself to keep herself safe.
So she's actually, at this point, incapable of loving Karen.
Yeah. Also, people that are classified as the borderline hermit never admit that they're wrong. They never say that they're sorry, they never apologise, and they never take responsibility, which you can see in the book. So the things that Calico describes completely fit in with how the hermit is described.
Yeah, definitely. She completely embodies that persona. But I suppose you said that she has based these characters on these ideals, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. Also, she
ideals, but...
Yeah. She dreads being understood by others, because to her that shows that she has not got that protective wall in place securely enough. So she would usually probably refuse to have any kind of psychotherapy or counselling. The borderline hermit is relentless in their criticism at their child's imperfections, because those imperfections may reflect back on themselves. They cling to the good child, and they may feel a sense of being trapped, drained and upstaged by that child, which is very, very sad. Suicide for them, so that's their own suicide, is seen as a victory more than a defeat. She will be more likely depressed and filled with a sense of impending doom. She will feel that people are out to screw her, and if anyone can take advantage or anything can go wrong, it probably will. So this, again,
which is
this sense of
why
doom.
you have to put everybody down around you so that they don't then stand up against you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is why she humiliates Karen in front of her husband and all that kind of stuff, to sort of really get into what's going on.
And it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy, is that by putting the people down around you, they then pull back, and that your defence is then secure because they're not able to get close enough to you.
But at the same time, she wants to be accepted, she wants to be loved.
Exactly.
So it's quite paradoxical that she can never get to what she wants because of the way she's being.
And plans with a hermit borderline are difficult because they often change their minds. I must admit, I'm probably very guilty of changing my mind about doing things at different times. And also that the borderline hermit's motto in life is that life is too dangerous.
Yeah.
So it's quite significant, the hermit, and I can see some of these traits within myself.
I can see some of the elements, although you will admit your because of the criticism you've experienced, you do admit failings in yourself, which is why you will accept that you need counselling. I mean, it took a lot for you to get to that point where you did, but you will accept that, at least now.
Yes, and now my issue is that I'm overly critical of myself, and as a result of that self-destructive behaviour, or that feeling that I am constantly defective, means that anxiety is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Particularly at the moment.
Both seem to express a lot of anxiety, although the mother might not in the same way. Definitely the daughter around her, you can feel that in there, but the mother's is tied up with her inability to show any weakness.
Exactly. So that was the borderline hermit. So that was Karen and Ute's story.
So what did you think of those characters?
I did feel very in tune with Karen. I don't know about you, but I felt that I could see why she was trying to do the things she was trying to do, but then I could also, unfortunately, see some of the things that I do that would be from Ute's perspective.
Yeah.
Particularly the everyone is out to hurt me and I'm going to hurt you first.
Do you think this is I know this is saying this is the hermit, but do you think this is quite typical of borderline personality?
I don't necessarily would say it was typical as such, but like some of the traits that she exhibits towards her daughter, I probably have seen myself do that to other people. But now I'm much more aware of those particular things that I do. It's definitely changed, I think. My behaviour has flipped.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see maybe some of the traits that I know from knowing you, but then I can also see a lot more destructive traits and more extreme ones, which I don't see with you. You're very complimentary towards people. I can't see you being as critical to people's faces, maybe, as much as I see her being. We can both be a little judgmental, I agree, but it's that real critical, relentlessly critical side that I don't see in yourself.
But I tend to find that that's directed at me.
Yeah, rather than outly to others. Whereas I think this particular, the hermit seems to do, yes, she's doing it to herself in private. We don't hear her inner voice, so we can't say whether she's doing it to herself. But she does appear to be doing it more to the people around her to justify herself as being okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't see you do. So, but then, as we've said, every person who has this is different, but it was interesting to sort of see different things and see the effect that mothers can have, and it was one that I did relate to in the anxiety and in the trying to impress your mother, because it's something that I did a lot
and still do to some degree.
Yes, that is true.
So the next mother-daughter relationship that we see is that of Ada, who is the mother, and Iria, who is the daughter. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm going to go with that because this is based on German women, so I'm trying to use the German pronunciation, hopefully. And so Ada is classified as the queen, and Iria as the queen's daughter, and it starts the chapter off with the darkness within the borderline queen is emptiness. So we first meet Iria at the hospital, where she has woken up after being unconscious for 3 days because she's had a car accident. She has concussion and a broken arm, but she immediately asks after her son Lucas's welfare. And to her relief, we find that Lucas wasn't in the car at the time of the accident, but has been staying with Iria's mother, Ada.
But that causes immediate anxiety.
Yeah, so we start to then learn a bit about how Ada treats both Lucas and Iria herself. So during Lucas's stay with Ada, she has decided to throw out his prize teddy bear, which really shows how emotionally cold she is, because this poor little boy is now missing his favourite teddy bear that he needs to go to sleep with.
And he is young, isn't he?
Yeah,
he
he's
is
not
like
very
4
old.
or 5 years old, so he is very emotionally attached to this. He wouldn't have understood any of it that's going on. He would have been worried about his mum. He would have needed it more than ever. But he also doesn't feel he can actually even question it, does he?
No, and I don't think he necessarily knows, because she does it stealthily when he's not noticed. But as a result of Iria finding out that she has thrown away this teddy bear, she goes over to Ada's and she retrieves it. She then decides that at this point, why would she continue to put herself through this trauma with Ada, and she cuts her out completely.
I felt at this point she did this more for her son than she did for herself.
Yeah.
Whereas she's put up with this for years and years and years, but almost doing it to her son was too much. And I felt that was mixed with, I never stood up to my mother as a teenager, but when I was moving out and I was worried my sister would have got the brunt of my mum and the way she was treating me, I sort of stood up for my sister to my mum and said, don't you dare do that kind of thing. And it is easier to stand up for others than it is for ourselves.
Oh, definitely.
And I've definitely felt that in the book and kind of related to that part of the story.
So we start to see during when she's in hospital, the way that Ada treats her. She seems irritated and like she has been inconvenienced by the fact that her grandson has been staying with her whilst Iria has been in the hospital. And she also criticises the fact that Lucas doesn't have any table manners in front of her friends. He eats like an animal, I think, at one point she states. It's just that Ada seems extremely critical of Lucas. So she tells him that he's eating too fast, that he's talking too much, that he's making too much mess, he's not eating with a knife and fork, and she complains that he is embarrassing her, which is a bit harsh considering he is only a little boy.
Yeah, he's actually too young to be doing any of the things that she wants. He isn't one that is of the age where you can sit and do nothing. He has to be entertained, he has to need something to do, and he's going to be noisy, and he's going to want to entertainment.
Exactly. And it's the fact that, as you said, it's taken for Iria to see her mother's criticalness directed towards her son for her to go, you know what, I'm not having this anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the bit that you go, you haven't been able to stand up for yourself, but good for you for being able to say, you know what, my son does not need this.
Which already puts her at a better parenting stance. You know, she is willing to do this for her son. She is willing to say, enough's enough. You might have done this to me, but I'm not having this with my son. That's it. And I was really impressed with the character at this point. I really liked this point where she kind of really stands up.
I think it shows great strength.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, as a person that has issues with my own self-identity, I don't think I would have ever been able to stand up for my own self.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily know what I am, who I am, what I need, what I should stand for.
But I suppose she's not the one with the border personality, it's the mother.
Yeah.
So the mother would at this point, I assume, see that as an abandonment.
Yeah, exactly. But we also see that Ada has this ability to change the way she acts to others outwardly.
Yeah.
So for example, when the nurse comes into the room, she becomes nice and sweet and the mother that you would expect, but she continues to berate Iria behind the scenes when the nurse isn't in the room.
Yeah, I can relate. I related really well to that because that's my mother worked at my secondary school, and to everybody else she was great, and then behind closed doors she was different, and people didn't necessarily always see that.
Yeah. She also finds that Ada is talking about the fact that she's going to have a dinner party, and against medical advice, Iria would prefer to check herself and discharge herself out of hospital than allow her son to stay with Ada for another night, which is really sad that she feels that much pressure and she wants to protect Lucas that much that she will put her own health at risk.
Yeah, to actually, great for her as a mother, what she's doing for her son, but at the same time, her own mother shouldn't expect that. Shouldn't expect her to actually go against medical advice so she can have a dinner party. It's very frivolous.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that she feels like it is an inconvenience and that somehow Iria has made herself have a car accident and end up in a coma for 3 days.
It's an accident. It was no one would have planned this.
And Ada justifies her actions of getting rid of the teddy bear. What did you think of that? She turns around and she tells Iria that it is time for him to leave his baby days behind. Children at school would laugh at him. It's a bit harsh.
It's really harsh, I think. And also, it's not her decision to make. That's what I think more annoyed me. I was like, this isn't your choice. This isn't your child. You don't get to choose these things. And so what if lots of kids have their toys in their beds till they're into their early teens, some of them, I think that actually she doesn't understand the world. But then doesn't she bring up a memory that she did the same thing to Iria? And so, but at a slightly older age, but she still did it.
Yeah, so Iria remembers that at one point she had a rag doll, which was her favourite rag doll. She loved it so much, but then Ada basically went into her bedroom, took away the doll and threw it away. And Iria became hysterical, and instead of her mother comforting her, she was lectured about how selfish she was being.
Yeah, because there's other people out there that don't have toys and things like that. And I just think that, again, this is her showing the control nature, the critical, somehow you've got to be perfect, so you shouldn't have to rely on anything else. And I think that's what she's trying to show here, that she's she should be emotionally strong to stand up on her own without anything else, even though she's young when this happens, even though her son is young when this happens. And it is not a position when you're that young that you should have to emotionally support yourself.
No, and she also feels that she needs to protect her dad from her mother's actions and her mother's criticism, so she tries to protect her dad, but as a result of the way that Ada treats him, her parents do divorce and her dad doesn't have contact with her anymore.
Yeah.
Which is sad. So Ada is an actress, and so again she has this ability to portray to the outside world what she wants them to see and not what is actually going on underneath. We also see some other situations from Iria's childhood, and one of those is where Ada has a complete meltdown because Iria is keeping a diary. So she finds this diary in her room, which Iria has hidden, and because of her own insecurities, Ada literally has a meltdown, rips up the diary, burns it, because she doesn't like the fact that she's got it.
Yeah, well, she doesn't like the fact that she feels that her daughter's writing secrets in that diary, and she should actually know everything about her daughter. She shouldn't have any secrets whatsoever. And that's how she justifies it, that she wants total honesty. And honesty is such an important quality, and I do want that. But still, people are entitled and are going to have a private life and secrets that they don't share with everybody. And as a mother, you're not entitled to all of those secrets.
But as a result of that, how did you feel about the fact that Ada then checks her room daily to make sure that she hasn't got anything hidden?
It just brings out as if she's paranoid, as if I don't know what she expects her child to do, as if her child's going to be plotting against her of some way. But then I think maybe because her child is the only one after her father leaves that could oust her to the public world where she's not this perfect actress that she portrays.
Iria says that her mother is often either aloof and distant or furiously angry with her. So she's got this one extreme to the other. There's nothing kind of in between. There's no grey area. But then there were often times where there was some affection, but this disappeared when Iria hit puberty and when Ada became cold and suspicious of her even more so, and so that she spent quite a lot of time checking up on her and checking what was going on.
Do you feel this is a competition with her daughter to be, you know, the best, to be the perfect one, to be, I don't know, but just this, I just get this feeling as I was reading it that she was competing with her daughter.
Yeah, completely.
But her daughter didn't know there was a competition.
No, not at all. And it's also the fact that as a teenager, she starts to criticise the way she looks. And she is tall and beautiful, but yet as a result of her mother, she starts to hate the fact that she is 6 foot and is stunning to look at because it's the way her mother treats her.
Which is what most people are craving for.
I would love that height.
I know. I'd have some of it.
Yeah, but she criticises and humiliates her. And imagine being told that you need to be ashamed of your body when you're trying to understand the world around you. And let's be honest, most teenagers have a lot of hang-ups about their body anyway, without your mother.
Yeah, definitely.
That isn't right.
I see teenagers at school and they're the most gorgeous, and yet they say, I'm ugly. They say, oh no, they're so... We all criticise ourselves visually and our image and our appearance, but girls are the worst at this as well. And you see that more so in the book, that it does develop into, if someone's going to criticise your appearance, you are going to feel bad about it yourself, especially someone so close to you. You should be able to trust your mum, and which means that you therefore believe everything they say. Yeah.
And how did you feel about the part where it talks about Ada making her undress in front of her and then pinching her breasts to check if they were normal?
Oh, I felt that was humiliating to another degree. I was horrified.
It's moving from the emotional neglect, isn't it? More to the physical.
Yeah, and I was particularly horrified at this point. It was almost unbearable to read because I just couldn't imagine this happening, and if I didn't want to imagine it happening because I thought it was so awful. What about you?
I didn't like that at all. I felt so bad for her, and as you said, it was difficult to read. I mean, how can someone feel the need to make someone else, your teenage daughter, undress in front of you just so you can check? If you didn't have any body issues before, you certainly would then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she's creating a daughter with a lot of issues.
But because Ada is an actress, there is a positive, because at one point Ada gets a job in America, and as a result of that, Iria stays with her best friend and her mother, so her best friend Tyne.
Yeah.
And she just gets to see what a different family situation is like.
I love this moment, and this is one of those times when you don't realise that your family aren't the same as everyone else until you're a teenager and you start going to other people's houses and you start seeing what they're like. And she gets almost an extreme version of this because she gets to live there, and you know, she's allowed to, she buys her jeans, which she's never allowed before. And you suddenly think, yes, this is the supportive, loving environment that she should have, that she can see happening. But unfortunately, I think it also means that she sees that the grass is actually greener on the other side for her.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved the fact that Iria was able to give her, it's not necessarily give, but she was able to express her feelings about her appearance to her friend's mum and identify all of the insecurities that Ada has made her feel.
Yeah.
And then Jessie, Tyne's mum, is just wonderful, and she's like, why do you feel this way? You shouldn't be feeling this way. She kind of gives the emotional support that Ada should have been giving her.
Yeah, I think she validates her feelings that she is actually allowed to not believe her own mother. And that's very hard. Like I said, you know, you're programmed to believe everything your mother says because you trust them. And I think she, in doing that and giving her the genes and helping her with her feelings around her appearance, she kind of is saying to her, it's okay not to believe your mother. It's okay to not trust everything she says. And it's okay to criticise the way that she's being towards you.
And at this point, I think it signals the change, doesn't it, for Iria? She is now at the point where she's like, you know what? Mum isn't always right, and she does stand up for herself.
Yes, she does.
which I think is fantastic. Again, another strong woman as a result of the emotional neglect and abuse that she is suffering.
Yeah.
And it's very clear from the writing that she isn't there and she's not holding the fact the way that Ada treated her against her. She's not going, I now hate my mother, I'm now going to go and, I don't know, try and get even with her.
Yeah, it's not one extreme to the other. She actually has maybe a bit more understanding for her than we even have.
Exactly. So, as we said, Ada is at work, or Ada's not at home, and Iria goes in and she finds Teddy and she washes him, and poor Teddy loses an eye, but he's not too worse for wear. So you kind of go, oh, poor Teddy. But when she goes into Ada's house, she has a look around because she's trying to find Teddy, and she goes into Ada's room and she sees all of the clothes from Ada's closet thrown out all over the floor, and that throws her back again into one of her childhood memories where she knows that this has happened before, and to the extreme where her mother has basically ripped all of the clothes out of her wardrobe and cut them up with scissors.
This is an extreme reaction. I can't imagine anyone doing that. You're talking about very extremes of emotion here, and we have touched on how borderline personality does give you those extremes, and you don't necessarily, you have these overreactions, and I think that you can see the mother having an overreaction in this moment.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I can definitely relate to this. So I've had rages where I have broken things, and I've also seen that people, particularly partners of people with borderline, will hide things from their partners so it doesn't get broken, because when you're in that rage there is nothing that's going to stop you. It is so overwhelming. I mean, I found strength that I never realised I had. I ended up being able to flip over my sofa and things, which is quite impressive.
Yeah.
Considering it's a pretty big, heavy sofa.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can get quite, I don't know, it's definitely traumatic for those around.
Yeah. But I think for them as well, I mean, like you said, you did things you weren't
even
even think
I don't want
that
to.
you probably didn't even think you were capable of. No. And so you're going to feel ashamed afterwards as well.
Oh, completely. I felt so worthless and useless afterwards that, yeah, I wished it never had happened in the first place. But the problem was that this cycle would continue and it would happen again. It was inevitable because I didn't know how to manage my emotions or able to express my own emotions to people.
And these parents can't because they don't have the diagnosis, they don't have the help that you've had since then.
Yeah.
So I do feel a bit sorry for the parents that actually they are abusing emotionally, sometimes even physically towards their children, but they actually have no control over it because it's this condition that they have that they don't even know they've got.
But once you get help, it does get easier.
Of course, yeah. But you don't see that in the book, which I think is one of the shames of this book, that you don't see someone getting help with this condition.
Even though borderline personality is probably going to be a part of me for the rest of my life, there are things that I have been able to do that has helped the situation get better.
Yeah.
So at the end of the chapter, we see that Iria has deleted her mother's number and has cut all ties with her mother because of the action she's taken over Lucas.
Yeah, and we take this, the last chapter goes forward 2 years, doesn't it, where she's continued with that for 2 years.
But she is contacted by a non-fiction writer that's doing a book about her mother to talk about what she remembers of her childhood.
Which I think she takes this as more of a curiosity as to what kind of facade her mother has weaved.
Yeah, so really when you start listening to what the writer has or start reading what the writer has to say about Ada, she comes up with this fact that she is such a strong modern woman who understood how to combine talent, creativity, business sense and traditional family values, and that she is a shining example of modern femininity. And you go, you obviously haven't met Ada. Or at least she is very convincing about
she's an actress.
Public persona. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I guess you kind of see that Iria is stuck between the fact that does she actually tell this writer what her mother is really like, or does she continue the facade that her mother has created?
Yeah, and that is a choice of, do you injure your mother because you know you're going to destroy all of these things that are going on, or do you go along with what she's saying and let the outside world continue to believe that she's this perfect mother and perfect actress and all-round great person?
I love the fact that Iria, as we read her internal monologue, goes, well, can I actually tell this person that my mother is a nutcase with violent tendencies? That made me chuckle.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't, but it did.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that is a really big decision for her to make as she's sitting there and deciding what to do.
But she feels that she's unable to describe her relationship with Ada. And she also has had this idea, because of her reading, that her mum might have a personality disorder, which I thought was quite insightful.
Yeah, I also think that comes into the decision. I think she doesn't want to hurt her, partly because she maybe feels it isn't completely her fault because it is this disorder. I think it helps her to classify, actually, her mother has done it out of this, not out of spite.
Yeah. I also really thought the fact that her mum says that Iria might not necessarily be cooperative with the book because they have had some tension and
to be the understatement of the book.
Yeah, the understatement of the century. Because, yeah, so she basically says that Iria's decision to cut her mother out is as some tension.
Yes. Yeah, she's not being given the full picture of what's going on, this poor writer. I felt a bit sorry for the writer, actually. She thinks she's going to have a really easy ride. She's just getting she wanted some nice little anecdotes to go along with the stories that she's already heard about going to Disneyland and how amazing it must have been to have this mother, and just wanted a few nice little quotes to put in her book. And does she end up with that? No, but she also doesn't end up with what she could have had, which was just to be berated with memories and ideas of what actually it was like.
So, as a result of this book, later on, Lucas has a friend over. So, again, the time has jumped. And she has a copy of the book. And she suggests to the two that Lucas can have a look at the book. And she confesses that she has never read the book. But she starts to flick through and she finds a bit about her mum's past. She also gets contacted by a care home because her grandmother is in a care home and they're concerned that she's going to pass away, but they can't get hold of Ada, and they ask if Iria could come in to the hospital to see her.
Yeah.
She goes into the hospital, she sees her grandmother, and her grandmother mistakes her for Ada. And she is critical towards her, she starts berating her, she is not a very nice lady towards...
No, and I think this is where you start to see that justification of the way Ada is and the way that Ada was taught that's what parent is like, therefore that's what she was like as a parent. And you can start to see, again, like we have with the other mums, that there's a history to the history. There is this justification as to why they are the way they are.
And she, because I think she has dementia, she is reliving some of the past memories that she has with Ada in it. And we find out that Ada, as a child, wasn't necessarily the easiest. Which is not saying that she should be told off for this, but her grandmother says that you were a horrible child. I sent you to boarding school because you pushed me down the stairs whilst I was pregnant with your sister and tried to kill us.
Yeah. This I found really difficult. You kind of, do you believe what she's saying or don't you? You know, and I think the daughter has the same reaction. Do you believe this story that actually she did try and do this, which is horrendous, but then you've got to go, what justifies a child to do that? What makes the child, act in that way?
Also, there's this issue that borderline parents breed borderline children, potentially.
Yeah.
Could it be that her grandmother is also suffering with borderline and as a result has passed down some of those traits to Ada?
Yeah.
Particularly with the way that she talks and criticises and is very derogatory about Ada, even though she's talking to Iria.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think you do see the mother acting a certain way and then the daughter becoming a mother and acting the same way that their mother did, especially if maybe the fact that they've got this borderline personality disorder means they don't necessarily recognise that what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, and it also turns out that Iria's grandmother, Ada's mother, blames her for her sister's cancer, and that she wasn't there when was going through the cancer treatment, and that it's her fault that she died. She also is accused of being ungrateful because she feels that she has sacrificed everything for Ada, and she also blames Ada for the fact that her dad left the family.
Yeah.
Because she drove him away. So Ada drove her own father away from the family.
Yeah. And I just can't... I thought it was so much that I couldn't quite believe what she was saying. There had to be more to the story than this, which then makes you think about, yes, maybe the grandmother also was a boarder, and then the daughter was, and then you can see that playing out.
Yeah. So it's quite tough, I think, at this point to see why Ada may have some of the traits that she has, particularly in terms of the borderline personality disorder.
Yeah. Like, why is she so stuck on her career? 'Cause she doesn't want to give it up because her mum was so resentful about giving it up and resented the child. So maybe she was actually trying to counter something that her mother did by doing the opposite, but actually ended up neglecting her own child because of it.
Yeah, so I definitely think that the way that Dr. Lawson's book characterises the Queen is fully represented within this account with Iria and Ada. So one of the things that it states is that the Queen can be intrusive, loud, impatient and flamboyant. Being an actress, I'm sure flamboyancy is probably part of the job description.
Yeah.
She is easily frustrated, often bursting with rage that can terrify her children. She can be disingenuous and may lie in order to get what she wants, which I think we can see in all
definitely.
of this. Lawson states that giving in to the borderline mother is easier than fighting against them, which we see with the way that Iria has gone along with what her mother has told her.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah. That confrontation can cause the mother to almost banish the child, which would make things so much worse for Iria if she had stood up to her mum and, yeah.
You feel that you get completely neglected if that's the case. And some relationship is better than none.
Yeah. The mother can end up creating borderline children by terrorising them with rejection and abandonment to punish them for not following what they want, which I think you can definitely see within this.
Yeah, you can see this with the grandmother and the mother and that kind of relationship.
Also, that the husbands of the borderline mother, if they do not go with what they want, then there are arguments and those would increase because they are not going on along with what the borderline mother wants.
Yeah.
And she will always be right about everything. She'll never say sorry, seek forgiveness, and she will never take responsibility for her own actions.
Which you definitely see in this book.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of discussion about, as a result of them going to Disneyland, how her mother had a stream of men going through the bedroom and making her stand outside and wait, which I thought was particularly difficult.
Yeah, I thought, it was something that a child should never have to live through, really, and to see that going on. Yeah. So do you think a good representation of border?
I think certain aspects, yes, I can definitely relate to. I mean, just so that everyone knows that I was diagnosed because I had all 9 of the traits. There's probably times when I may be loud and impatient, and that definitely the rage part. There is a part of a borderline which states that you are often impulsive, which would support the discussion where there are multiple men when they're on holiday.
Yeah.
I definitely think there are parts of this that I relate to. Because not everyone is the same, there are certain things that I wouldn't necessarily do, but that doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I think that, but I found this one the hardest to maybe be compassionate about.
Is that because of the air of detachment that you feel between Iria and her mother?
Maybe. But I liked the fact that the daughter stood up and...
Or do you think it might be the fact that there was this competition that Ada has put onto Iria?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it is that. Maybe it is the competition
because I found
element.
that the competition was probably the hardest part of their relationship. It's this competition that Iria has no knowledge of that she's trying to fight.
Yeah.
But I also think that what is really difficult is the fact that there is no acknowledgement of her child's emotional needs within the parts where you have the flashbacks about Iria's childhood. There is just, I don't know, I find Me personally, I am in tune with the slightest change in emotion from people, and that I can read them quite quickly and quite well, and that can lead to some negative aspects of my behaviour because I can then target those things and push people away effectively.
It does mean that you can empathise more with them and
would be more in tune with your child's needs rather than neglecting them.
Yeah, and you don't see any of that. No, I did find that hard.
So that was the relationship between Ada and Iria, and that she was classified as the Queen from the book written by Dr. Lawson. I think we will leave it there for this week because we still have another 2 mother-daughter relationships to discuss, that of Jo and Gudrun, and Mandy and Petra, where the mothers are classified as the waif and the witch. So until next week, bye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Mental Health Book Club podcast. If you feel that you need additional support with your mental health, please call the Samaritans on 116 123, which is a 24-hour helpline. And if you need additional information about mental health issues, please visit Mind at mind.org.uk. Next week we will continue reading Dandelion Angel by C.B. Calico, which you can find more details at our website, which is mentalhealthbookclub.com. We would really love to hear what you think about this podcast. Please get in touch with us at our Facebook page, which is the Mental Health Book Club, or at our Twitter, which is at MHBC_podcast. And if you like the podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.